By the time that you watch this, Monster Hunter Wilds should already be available worldwide for Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and PC. It's been a long journey to reach this point. No disrespect to Monster Hunter Rise and its gameplay or direction, but so many people have been waiting for a true blue follow-up to Monster Hunter World. And while many could also argue, myself included, that they're unique enough to stand on their own, Wilds has this kind of magnetism that I haven't felt for the franchise since World. It's interesting because we could sit here dissecting all of its faults or technical limitations, and yet there is so much more to appreciate. Wandering around the new locales like the Windward Plains and watching a dust storm casually roll in, admiring the horizon as lightning rains down from the sky, and listening to all of the bugs, birds, and other endemic life of the Scarlet Forest, especially during a downpour. The overall ambiance is a treat, even as you rush through to your next target. However, perhaps the most notable part of Monster Hunter Wilds is the combat. In my opinion, it's the best in the series, which isn't an easy accomplishment. After all, even before World and Rise, titles like Monster Hunter Generations and Ultimate offered an astounding amount of playstyles, skills, and strategies, not to mention challenges, which we'll get to. World seamlessly translated the series' combat into a big-budget AAA affair without losing much of the charm that defined it, further enhancing its tenderizing mechanic with the Clutch Claw in Iceborne. Meanwhile, Rise went a little wilder, ironically enough, with its techniques, interweaving the wire bug into attacks and defenses, and eventually allowing you to swap skill sets in Sunbreak. Even with the complexity that each title interweaved into their combat systems, they started with solid foundations that were fun to engage with. Don't say you weren't impressed when your first Helm Splitter caused a Rathian to fall out of the sky, and that you weren't hyped to see your dual blades cartwheeling across a monster's body. Rise cemented my love for the sword and shield with the return of Metsu Shoryugeki, a massively damaging counter which, if the name wasn't enough of a clue, served as a homage to Street Fighter. So how does Monster Hunter Wilds top both of them? Well, it comes down to feel, first and foremost. There's a certain feel to Monster Hunter's weapons, and Wilds captures that incredibly well. Bashing enemies with the sword and shield feels visceral, like you're actually beating a monster with a blunt object, and the resulting stun feels worth it. It already felt pretty good in Rise, but Wilds steps it up a notch. That same impact applies to many other weapons, or at least those I spent time with, to a similar degree. Smashing a monster with the gun lance and unloading its shells, the heft of wielding the weapon, yet the feedback from its explosive attacks is immensely satisfying. Of course, Wilds goes further beyond by introducing and improving on several things with enhanced responsiveness. Perfect Guard is a great example since it feels so close to the parrying seen in titles like Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Granted, it can be very forgiving. Against some larger monsters, it felt like I had no business perfectly guarding certain attacks. Nevertheless, it's great, and there's still an element of risk versus reward. Perfect guard against an attack, and you significantly reduce the stamina drain and damage received. This gives a stronger window to unleash a counter hit, aka an offset attack. I've experimented with other weapons, but as you probably guessed, the sword and shield is my favorite. Even a simple counter slash feels powerful thanks in no short amount to skills like offensive guard. The animation work reinforces that, with your hunter briefly readying the slash before delivering it. Of course, transitioning into further attacks like Spinning Reaper or the Charged Chop is also incredibly easy, though you don't always have to start with a slash as an offset attack. The Charged Chop is another favorite of mine, especially as a replacement for Perfect Rush, which is still decent but nowhere near the damage as previous games. You can transition into a Charged Chop at almost any time. It starts with a small windup before your hunter plunges it into a monster's hide. praise the hit stop improvements because you feel every hit. Knowing you've snagged onto a monster's wound in the process makes it that much more satisfying. The sword and shield still feels like an all-rounder weapon that does a little bit of everything pretty well, but mostly relies on quick strikes. The new additions make it an admirable tanking tool, especially if you build into guard and guard up, and it feels like you're effectively going blow for blow with a monster's attacks. The fact that you're constantly building up to that next knockdown or further opening up wounds also makes it incredibly rewarding. You've probably heard enough of the wound system and focus mode, how the former fits so well with the Monster Hunter combat loop while the latter's focus strikes feel appropriately devastating. I admit that the magnetism of focus strike is odd at times. You could aim somewhere around a wound and not reach it sometimes, and at other times, magically teleport to the other side of the monster to destroy another. However, they both fulfill their purpose, rewarding you for focusing your attacks on a monster's part. The fact that you can forego a focus strike on a wound and attack it normally is also a relevant strategy, depending on your requirements. Overall, the system is relatively simple to understand. Attack glowing bits for more damage. Call it an understatement, but offering something that new players and veterans can creatively leverage is great. This also extends to focus mode. You could attack a monster, confident that your attacks will land in the right spot, or you could readjust directions mid-combo. If you want to aim during the whole attack, go right ahead. Even if I would have liked more monsters to tussle with, the current roster still allows for different strategies. Doshiguma might go easier when relying on the perfect guard or offset attack combo, but Ajarican proves trickier since you're sometimes better at blocking further damage, even after a perfect guard. Nursilla is relatively easy to block from the front, but some of your follow-up attacks may bounce off its mandibles, which means adjusting some things. There are other notable examples throughout the experience further challenging your mastery of a weapon's fundamentals, and they're worth fighting over and over. While Monster Hunter Wilds has attracted some concern given its more streamlined systems, they're in service of getting you to the combat, which is the best part of the game, albeit not the only part. It continues the practice of making almost every weapon easy to pick up but challenging to master with varying degrees of complexity, and then figuring out how to apply that to a hunt for maximum effectiveness. With responsiveness and powerful feel, Wild's combat makes for an addictive experience, whether you're in for a hunt or two, or grinding for hours at a time. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.